Hello, welcome to this new series called Life with a Desmoid, where I'm going to be interviewing people who have been diagnosed with a desmoid tumor. And here's the first guest, Ashely. She's actually the first person I met who also had a desmoid, which was back in 2018, I believe, so a while ago. And I'm really thrilled that she accepted to be my first guest. So let's go. You're my first guest. Thank you for doing this. Can you present yourself?
Yes, my name is Ashely Williams. I am a 8-year desmoid patient. I'm from South Florida. I am very honored to do this with you, Gwen, because we've been through so much of this together, even though we're like a world apart. And so I'm just excited that you're doing something like this for our community and for others.
Do you have a fun fact about yourself?
Oh man, fun
Yeah.
fact. Um, so I don't know if this means much to a lot of people, but I really like the Enneagram. Are you familiar with the Enneagram?
Yes, somewhat.
So it's essentially like a personality type test. That's a gross overgeneralization. But I'm an Enneagram 7, which basically means that I like to do new things and have new experiences. And so I'm often, like looking for new things to do. And if we're having like cancer and treatment talk, after every treatment, I have decided to go travel to a different country as a way to celebrate that treatment is over. And so that's my Enneagram 7-ness coming out. But that is a fun fact that has now become the precedent that if I have a treatment, then I have to go to some country to go celebrate.
That
when it's
sounds like a great way to celebrate.
Yeah. It has been a lot of fun. It's made it definitely celebratory and enjoyable.
What was your life like before you had any symptoms of your desmoid?
Yeah, that's a hard question. I think I may have said this before too, of
Yes, you did.
it's hard for me to put myself back in that space and picture what life was like before diagnosis and treatment, just because it's been such a daily part of my life for almost a decade at this point. And my mindset and my worldview was so different back then too. And so it's hard for me to put myself there at all. I think that I was in a place where I was just starting my career. And so I had graduated from my master's program. I had just started my career in social work. And so I was really trying to prove myself and trying to do my job well. And so I was in that phase of life, of just trying to achieve. I'm an overachiever, and so the achievement was probably pretty strong before my diagnosis.
And you said you were diagnosed 8 years ago, so in 2015, right?
Yes.
So what
Mhm.
happened during that year that made it that you ended up with a diagnosis?
It's interesting. My desmoid tumor is in my left leg. It's behind my left knee. And my whole life, I have had issues with my left leg. Um, I have always been diagnosed with a tight heel cord or a tight Achilles tendon. So I've had lots of scans and tests run on my ankle, but never on my knee, which is where the tumor is. Now, in 2015 in June, I was in a very bad car accident and my knees, I'm short, so my knees were close to the dashboard, but my knees hit the dashboard and they hit each other. And I had some pretty serious trauma to my knees. I was on crutches for 3 weeks after the car accident. But after that, I thought that it was over. I went to physical therapy like 3 months afterwards. I remember they were going to discharge me from physical therapy. And I remember telling my therapist, like, this does not feel right. Like my leg just feels like it's cranking tighter and tighter. And he said, don't worry about it. Swelling's normal. It's no big deal. Like, get over it, basically. In October of that year, I woke up one morning and I couldn't walk. I could weight bear. I could put weight through my toe, but I couldn't stretch my leg enough for me to get my heel on the ground. So I started using crutches and was diagnosed within the next week or so, once they did an ultrasound and did a biopsy and found that it was a desmoid tumor.
And once you got the diagnosis, do you remember what went through your head? What your thoughts were in the first few weeks, maybe?
Yeah, I do know, but I also don't know. I remember an orthopedic, and I had difficulty with him helping me, really. I knew that something was off in my leg, and I thought that it was a torn meniscus or something like that from the car accident. And he made comments to me like, if you can't walk, then there's something really wrong with you, and I doubt there's something wrong with you. Like, questioning whether or not like I was, exaggerating my experience. But whenever I finally did the ultrasound, I think the ultrasound, I got misdiagnosed again. I think he told me that it was a Baker's cyst and that if it didn't go down on its own, then we would need to drain it. I think I did end up getting an MRI, and with the MRI, he called me and he told me, in my 35 years of experience, I've never seen anything like this before. So I'm going to refer you to an orthopedic oncologist. And at the time, I'm in my mid-20s, I know what the word oncologist means. And I'm thinking like, what? Like, I don't understand. So I called the oncologist, and this was October of 2015. They didn't have an appointment until February of 2016. So I'm thinking, okay, 4 months to get in. They must not be that concerned. It's not that big of a deal. It must not be that bad. And then 2 or 3 hours later, I got a call from the doctor on a Saturday. And he said, we got your scans. I need you to come in Monday morning at 7 a.m. before the office opens.
Oh,
so that's really the moment that I think it hit me like, okay, there's something wrong here. But still, in my mind, I wasn't thinking tumor. I wasn't thinking cancer. I wasn't thinking anything like that. And the moment that I do remember, because it was traumatic, is when the doctor walks in and says, okay, you have something called a desmoid tumor. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to treat you with chemo for 1 year, 52 weeks weekly. And I remember being like, what is happening to me? At that point, I went into like, I think probably utter shock. I think I was in shock probably throughout that entire course of treatment. So after that moment, I don't remember much necessarily of what I was thinking or feeling. I was in shock for a long time.
that sounds like a horrible way to explain it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the doctor. I understand that he has something to say.
Yeah.
There are ways to say things in life, and I'm sorry, but this is not it.
This doctor, fortunately, I've learned, he's been with me the whole time. You know what direction the scan went based off of how he walks into the room. So he doesn't even have to say anything. He'll walk into the room like happy and dancy if it's good, or he'll just walk into the room like stern and serious if it's not good. So I've learned.
Okay, so, well, I guess you did answer my next question, which was misdiagnosis. I mean, it's very common for desmoids, sadly, lack of awareness about it, which really sucks. I'm gonna say it, it sucks.
It does. Even though during that time, my symptoms and stuff was dismissed, and I was diagnosed with a Baker's cyst before, and phantom pain. But I do consider, which is sad, I do consider 5 months being fortunate of like a fairly quick diagnosis for this disease.
It has to change.
Yeah.
You went through a lot of treatments. You did go through a lot of stuff.
So can you quickly tell us about your treatments?
It's funny that you say that because comparatively, right, within the desmoid community, I don't feel like I've been through that much, but compared to like the normal human population, it's a lot, you know? And
Yes.
so I feel kind of like in that in between where I feel bad claiming that it's been a lot of treatment, even though it's been like 8 years of kind of nonstop treatment, you know? So in 2015, I was diagnosed November 11th. And by December 10th, so less than a month later, I was doing methotrexate and vinblastine, which is an IV chemo that you get once a week.
A lot
I
of
was,
fun. Sorry, I'm
oh,
interrupting, but
you're reminiscing.
yes. Oh my God, such good times.
I am fortunate because the tumor responded after 7 months. And so I did 26 total treatments, I think, instead of 52. And so my treatment was cut in half by that at that point. I had a couple of months off, and then they put me on diclofenac, which is just a anti-inflammatory like Soldenac, but
Oh,
diclofenac I handled better. The Soldenac, I might be saying that wrong, like upset my stomach, and so the diclofenac was easier for me. Um, I was on that for probably a year, and the tumor was still growing. So then I went on sorafenib or Nexivar. I did that all of 2018, so January to December of 2018.
wow.
Um, for that full year, sorafenib was very hard, I thought. I mean, I guess they're all hard, but sorafenib was hard. I was off for all of 2019 and 2020. So I think I had 2 years off actually. 2021 found out that the tumor had come back. So 2021, I had cryoablation. That was also very hard. Cryoablation did not work for me, unfortunately. So that was July of 2021. March to May of 2022, I did 30 rounds of radiation. Um, After that, the damage was kind of already done in my leg, right? So my tumor, because the car accident caused the tumor to grow, they question and think maybe I had the tumor for a long period of time, but that the trauma from the car accident ripped it open, released growth factors, and caused it to grow aggressively. And because my orthopedic didn't, take it seriously, it grew to the size of like a large bunch of grapes. My tumor's pretty large. It's like 17 centimeters by 10 by 10 in
That
my
is
leg.
big. Oh,
Yeah.
wow. Behind your
So
knee. I just want to emphasize
yeah, it's
crazy.
like behind my kneecap, comes out the back of my calf, goes down my calf, goes up into my thigh. So it's pretty big. Um, and the radiation fortunately seemed to keep it stable. It's been stable since May of 2020, but the damage was already done in my leg. So because of the size of the tumor, it's positioned behind my calf muscles and behind my um like tendons, and so because it grew so much, it pulled up on my calf muscles, causing me to have drop foot that wasn't nerve related. It was like muscular. It was a contracture of my muscle. And so my bones actually shifted. Like your ankle bone is like they're right next to each other, and my bone actually went down here. And because of the force that was pulling on my gastroc and my Achilles tendon, so because of that, last year at this time, I was seeing doctors and trying to make a decision about whether or not amputation was the best option or whether to try an experimental surgery. So I opted for the experimental surgery, even though I was told it likely wouldn't work. I'm the first person that they tried this procedure on to see if it would work. Yeah, so we're really good at being guinea pigs
Guinea
with the
pigs.
tumors. I had an external fixator placed for a couple of months. And for those who don't know what that is, it's essentially like spikes being drilled into your bones and then coming out of your leg and being affixed to an outside cage contraption that I had to turn a dial every day in order to get my foot to move up and my bones to move. It's like braces for your bones. It's really terrible. After that, I had a surgery to lengthen my Achilles tendon and to release my ankle capsule. And that's where I'm at now. And so my last treatment for the tumor was radiation last year, but I'm only, I don't know, 5 months out of, maybe even 4 months out of this like really aggressive surgery to try to get me back to a place where my leg is functional and I can walk. The fact that I don't have a brace, I don't have a heel lift, I'm walking, I'm exercising, it is like we're all kind of stunned.
It's
Very.
really exciting to see you. I think, if I remember correctly, we met via Instagram in 2018, something like that.
Probably, yeah.
You go through all of that and not be able to walk, and
Yeah.
now you can just go on a walk with your dog, go to the beach and enjoy things.
Yeah.
It's
Oh, you're gonna make me cry. Yeah. It's amazing.
okay. I just wanted to elaborate a little bit on radiation, because radiation is not the most common treatment for desmoids because they tend not to respond as well as other types of sarcomas. So can you explain just a little bit what the process of getting radiation is like?
Yes. So I did not want to do doxorubicin. I have seen others go through doxorubicin, and I had been through 2 rounds of chemo at that point and just did not. I wanted to try my other options. I tried cryoablation first. It was more of a functional treatment versus like a tumor treatment. The cryo did not work for me. And so with radiation, that was really one of my only other non-chemo options. Now, when I met with the radiologist, I'm going to repeat things that I believe that he told me, but I am not a medical professional, so this could be somewhat inaccurate. But he told me that for desmoid patients, because a desmoid is akin to scar tissue and has like the collagen aspect of it, that the radiation that's needed in order to actually affect the tumor is much stronger than a radiation that you would use for some other type of cancer. So for me, because it was a desmoid tumor and because it's so large, my radiation each day was 9.5 minutes, where for some other types of radiation treatment, it's like 30 seconds to 2 minutes, maybe. I was told that it's essentially the strongest amount of radiation allowable for like the human body. I was also told that there's a 10 to 15% chance that if I do radiation, that my tumor could turn malignant or into an osteosarcoma. And if it turns into an osteosarcoma, then my only option at that point would be to amputate. So they don't tend to recommend radiation because chemo is less likely to change the makeup of the tumor. But I think for desmoid tumor patients, like 10% means that will happen to me,
Yes, I was gonna say 10 to 15% sounds like a lot. I mean,
Yeah.
I understand why you went through with it,
Yeah.
but it still sounds really scary.
Yeah. Well, one of the reasons that I actually went through with it is because my doctor told me that there was a 60 to 70% chance that it would be effective. For me, the radiation was up until this point successful. My last scan showed shrinkage, which I've never had shrinkage with any other treatment. I have for the last 8 years have had to wear compression socks and all sorts of things to account for the fact that my leg swells up really, really large whenever I do simple things like walk too much or eat too much salt or whatever. And I don't have to worry about those things anymore. My leg doesn't respond in the same way since after radiation. But I will say I also feel very fortunate because my desmoid tumor is in my leg. And so I am capable of having radiation, where many people whose desmoid tumor might be in their abdominal cavity or surrounding organs might not have the same option.
You've got to have some luck somewhere,
You're right. I'll take it where I can get it.
Silver linings. You had some pretty intense side effects. Do you remember what the most annoying one was?
Yes. I mean, it's funny because some of my side effects have been things like intense pain or inability to walk for several months, you know. But the one that my mind goes to as being the most annoying was when I was taking Nexivar or sorafenib. Um, I was allergic to the chemo, and so it affected me in a lot of different ways. But it got to a point where I couldn't keep any food down, and so every time I ate, I would get sick, you
Oh,
know. So
wow.
just the like gastric abdominal distress was a lot during that time. And I still look to that as being like, it was hard to exist with that, you know. And I feel like I've had worse experiences, like worse side effects, like extreme pain and, you know, immobility and all of that. But when you can't eat, that was hard. That was probably the most annoying. Yeah. I used to juice a lot and make smoothies a lot. But even that, like a couple sips of smoothie, I would be sick. But I know that feeling too of like I'm full after literally nothing.
We've both had worse, but no,
Yeah. The question wasn't what was the worst side effect, it was the most annoying, you know? And
exactly. Yeah,
there is a difference between those two.
the most annoying is like showing people that sometimes it's the simple things that will make your life crazy annoying because of chemo or whatever treatment you're on. If you're comfortable, can you tell me a little bit how your journey affected your personal and professional life?
Again, I find myself fortunate. I'm very thankful because I was able to work full time throughout all of my treatments. That's not because I was capable, it's because I had employers who were willing to work with me and keep me on, understanding that I was doing my best and trying my best. And so that is huge. I will say, for the first time, I lost my job this past July. And so I lost a job and health insurance because there were certain requirements of the job that I couldn't maintain because of my desmoid tumor. Primarily, the job was located in a very rural location in the US, and there are no doctors who treat desmoids in that area. Professionally, I have been very fortunate that I've had jobs that have worked with me. But it's hard because you have to, at least in my case, I've had to maintain employment in order to access healthcare. And so that's a lot to carry while you're, you know, going through chemo or you can't walk or whatever the case may be. It's impacted me professionally also in the sense that in my profession, I'm a licensed clinical social worker, which is a mental health therapist. And so a lot of my job has always been focused on trauma and trauma recovery. That's kind of the niche that I've been in for several years. But I've been able to work with several desmoid tumor patients over the last couple of years. It's obviously given me context for their experience. And so it's affected kind of the course of my work too, of who I'm able to like help or take on as clients as a result. My personal life, it's affected a lot, I'd say. You know, I think for a long time, you know, you and I both are kind of settled into this diagnosis. We've been doing this for a long time. And so I think we've hit a rhythm, so to speak. I don't want to speak for you, but like we've
I agree.
yeah, we've grappled with a lot. But especially at the beginning, I didn't even know how I felt about my diagnosis. So when other people reacted in different ways, it's like I don't know how I feel about that. I had a lot of friends become uncomfortable or annoyed by my diagnosis. I told you before, like the fun fact, I like to do new things, right? I like to go, I'll be the person who will try the new restaurant or try the new activity or whatever. And when I couldn't do those things anymore, I found that a lot of my friendships were built on that, like it's just someone to do something with, but
Oh,
it didn't go deeper. And so the fact that I couldn't do those things, several people became annoyed. Several people said things like, call me when it's over and then we can hang out again. I can't stand seeing you this way. When you're back to normal, those types of things. Um, I've had several like relationships throughout. Let me not say several. I've had like two relationships throughout my diagnosis. And I always kind of had the mindset of this is an inconvenience, this is high maintenance, like who's going to be interested in being with someone who has something like this. But I haven't really actually felt that in my relationships. I feel like the people who I've been with, although those relationships didn't last, have always treated this part of my life gently, And so I'm thankful for that as well, because I know that that's not everybody's experience.
to be honest, I get the feeling that, oh, dating when you're sick is like, oh my God, I'm bringing so much baggage, or however you want to phrase it. But it's in the end, it's not.
Yeah.
I mean, the person who's going to be with you is going to be with you for mainly the right reasons, I guess. And they're not going to jump into a relationship if they feel like you're a burden. But I can relate to that. It's difficult to not see some parts of it as, oh my God, they have to deal with that on top of everything else.
Yeah. It's just the human experience, that we're going to have periods of time where we suffer or where we have to go through very difficult things. And unfortunately for people like us, that's very front and center, right? And so people who are uncomfortable by sadness or grief or challenges, something like this tends to repel them. But not everybody, I think some people have the understanding and the maturity that like, this is a part of life and it's being dealt with, but it has affected my relationships and my friendships definitely significantly, in the sense of being able to see who like your real friends are, the people who are really there to support you, who want to walk this out with you, who are fine just like sitting in the grief and sadness of it with you. But it's taken a while to find those people, because that was how I was impacted a lot at the beginning, was realizing like, oh, okay, I guess I don't have many people who are willing to walk through this with me. Yeah.
So you touched on working with trauma and everything, and you do a lot of work for associations such as Stupid Cancer and the DTRF. How did you get started in becoming a speaker, basically?
I have done like public speaking for most of my career, but it has been primarily in foster care. I worked in foster care for several years. And so educating people on trauma and what children might be going through whenever they're in foster care. I really enjoy the education piece. I'm a learner and I really enjoy being able to give that back to other people where the knowledge might be useful. And I found for me that there was such a lack of information about how a chronic cancer or a chronic disease affects you from a mental health standpoint. There's a lot of things on chronic trauma. There's a lot of things on maybe like a round of treatment, and then like you go into remission or something. But I could not find for myself anything that gave me some insight into what to expect in the experience. And so I, answered a call for speakers with Stupid Cancer. That's how I first got started, because I really felt like everything that I knew about trauma, that our experience is traumatic. And I don't think that that's necessarily acknowledged. And so I taught kind of an educational session on trauma resilience for stupid cancer. And as a result, some other people saw that, like MD Anderson and UCLA and some other like hospital groups. And so I've been able to do some trainings for them and their staff as well, which has been really cool. And after, kind of seeing how the reception was in the cancer community, I felt very strongly of like, I want to be able to provide what I can to my community. Because so much of the desmoid community, there's always this question about, is it cancer or is it not? And so like a lot of our community doesn't feel comfortable accessing resources like stupid cancer or resources at their cancer center, because I've heard so many desmoid patients say like, but that's not me. Like, I don't want to take something that isn't mine. I don't want to be dramatic. I don't want to make it bigger than it is. So I felt very strongly of like, no, a lot of what we go through from a mental health perspective may actually be, I don't want to put degrees on it, but it's intense, especially comparatively, because one, a lot of what we deal with is chronic. It's a forever thing for many of us. And a lot of what we deal with is minimized. And so minimizing our diagnosis and the things that we go through is something that I felt very strongly I wanted to speak against, because this is not an easy road.
The way that it is classified as a benign tumor, because, well, I guess technically it is, but it makes it difficult. But in the same way, I don't like it being a benign tumor. I know in some doctors in France use intermediate tumor to be like, it's not cancer, but it's not benign, which I really like because it makes me feel a bit more closer to, okay, I can access those resources and everything. In the same way that there are benign brain tumors, but I'm like, that's a brain tumor. There's a finite space. At some point, it's going to become life-threatening if you don't do something. So I feel like we're kind of in the same group as people who have benign brain tumors, who are like, yes, it is benign, but you can still have big repercussions from that benign tumor.
Yes, 100%. But I think, I've heard it before. I'm sure you've heard it before. I'm sure a lot of people have heard it before. Like, but at least it's not cancer.
Absolutely.
So that it's a very hard like narrative to speak against. And I think it's important for us to classify our disease realistically and see it for what it is and all of the things that we have to endure in order to treat it. And also knowing that there isn't necessarily like a known treatment. I know that that's being worked on, but it just classifies us in this unclassifiable category that makes what we experience challenging.
So there is this notion of self-advocacy for patients. Do you remember the first time you've had to self-advocate?
100%. It was in 2021, the beginning of 2021, my scans showed that my tumor was growing again. And it had been 2 years since my treatment with Nexavar. So I was pretty devastated, and it was still COVID era. And so I had to go into the doctor's appointment by myself. I wasn't allowed to have anybody with me. And I have some trauma and some triggers, especially in the actual medical offices. And so it's hard for me to go to appointments alone because my reaction is, I just want to get out of here. So like, I'm not going to listen to what you have to say, or like, I need someone there with me to ask all the questions, to like take notes about what's being said. And then whenever I can calm down, like, then we can talk about what happened in the doctor's office, but I know that I don't do well processing in the moment in doctor's offices, especially whenever they're telling me my tumor has grown again. So I was by myself in COVID, tumor's growing again. They told me they wanted me to start doxorubicin, My appointment was on a Monday. This was on a Monday. They wanted me to start doxorubicin on Wednesday. So they wanted me to start it in 48 hours. During chemo or COVID time, someone couldn't be with me. At this point, I lived in a different part of the country, but I had come here for my doctor's appointment. I flew to South Florida to go to my doctor's appointment. And I just remember like almost passing out. Like, I don't even know what's to do. Before I even left the doctor's office and got back to my family who was waiting for me, I got a call from the fertility clinic too at the doctor's office. That's like, okay, well, you're going to be starting chemo on Wednesday. We need to figure out how to preserve your eggs if you want to. And I literally told them, I was like, I cannot talk to you right now. Like, do not call me, like, I don't even know what's happening, but I signed consents and everything for doxorubicin in that room because I just did not understand. I was in shock. And so I just did not want to do it. And so I started calling doctors for a second opinion. But mainly my first moment of advocacy was when I was being sent to chemo for the third time and knowing like, I don't want to do this. I need to see what other options are available.
Which ended up working in your favor in the end.
In the end, yes. I wish, this is just my experience, I wish radiation would have been on the table at the beginning. Radiation for me was the easiest treatment. It was the least painful treatment, the one with the least side effects, and the ones with the most benefits. And so I so wish that would have been an option given to me at the beginning. It wasn't, but yes, it worked in my favor in the end.
During all your journey, I don't know what to call it,
that works.
That works perfect. During your journey, have you developed any coping skills to, well, deal with the whole situation?
Yes. So one, I'm a master dissociator. And when we talk about when we talk about dissociation, especially from a clinical standpoint, like often that's identified as not necessarily being a good thing. But I think when you're in the middle of your treatment or you're in the middle of something really hard or really traumatizing, that ability to disconnect from it is okay to get through it, as long as that's not like our common state afterwards. I think that we have to really fight for and pursue emotional healing and that reintegration of ourselves. But I think to get through a lot of things, it's a cycle. Like, I have to emotionally disconnect, I have to get through it, and then I have to like re-engage and reconnect and bring that emotion back online. But I would also say I am a believer in the very simplest of strategies. In my clinical practice, I teach the simplest of strategies because I've seen them be the most effective with people. And so I believe that when we go through stress or we go through trauma, it impacts our nervous system and it dysregulates our nervous system. Anything that we can do to regulate our nervous system is really powerful. I'm a big believer in going for walks. I mean, now that I can, but even when I couldn't go for walks, what kind of movement could I do? Not even physical exercise, but just some kind of movement. There were different strategies that I learned. One was called Wuji, which I could do sitting in like on the couch or sitting in my bed. And it's really just like a practice of movement that I think is similar to Tai Chi, something like that, but just really powerful for me because our body is intended to move. And often when we go through treatment or we are physically impacted, movement becomes really challenging. So how can I move my body in a way when I'm limited? Movement was huge. Being outside is huge for me, just being in nature. There's something called earthing, which is like whenever the bottom of our feet comes in contact with a natural surface, like grass, sand, water, there's an exchange of electrons that actually helps to regulate our nervous system. So there's a scientific and physiological reason that being outside is important. Things like breathing exercises, all of these things I find to be very, very powerful. but we have to understand that they're not like a one-time cure-all, you know, it's a practice and a development of these practices for the intention of helping to regulate our nervous system. And so the simplest of strategies, going for a walk, sitting outside, reading a book. I'm a very spiritual person, so like reading the Bible, those kinds of things are very powerful for me. But, you know, being with loved ones, you know, being present with the people that you're close to, all of these things I think sound really simple, but I think they're the most powerful. Yeah.
But I love that you're going for the simplest and the most effective ones for you. I mean, that's something that almost everyone can do, I guess. Do you have any piece of advice for people who are newly diagnosed?
Yes, I do. I think being kind to yourself is a very important part of this process. A lot of people, in my experience, had a lot of opinions about what I should do and how I should move forward and how I should treat, and I should drink celery juice and I should take juice plus, like I should do like all of these different things, right? And I think one, being kind to myself in the sense of like not allowing myself to feel shamed or to shame myself for how I'm handling this situation. It's hard and it is debilitating in many senses. And so not holding myself to a ridiculously impossible standard, but recognizing like this is a season where I need to rest. I need to allow my body to heal and to recover. And I don't need to achieve or prove that like I won't let this get me, you know. I had that mindset a lot, and the reality is I haven't let it get me, but I needed to like slow down and chill and like allow my body to heal, and that was a very hard process. But in the same vein, like being kind to ourselves, I think being kind to others is also very important, because we've talked about it before, like people say the weirdest things, and 9 times out of 10 people are coming from a good place. They just don't have any idea what to say. So giving people the benefit of the doubt, educating people where it's appropriate, letting people know if the things that they say are like weird or inappropriate, educating people on the best way to support you, because I've had a lot of people ask me what can they do for me, and I'm like, I don't know, you know, like I really don't know. But finally told them things like, you know, it'd be nice to like get out every once in a while, or it would be nice to like have a DoorDash, like a food or something, you know. And so really allowing people to help you and educating them on the best way how, giving them the benefit of the doubt and being kind to them. That's a lesson that took me a very, very long time, and I'm still working on it.
Yeah, kindness is so important.
Yeah.
It is. And it's difficult because, as you said, we are being judged and we are being told what to do. And we would all feel better if we were kinder to ourselves, even if we're not sick, actually. I feel like we tend to be in a society that has so many expectations on us that we are not kind enough.
Yeah.
So I guess that's just for everyone. Be kinder to yourself.
That's a great point.
Okay, if people would like to reach out to you, where can they find you?
So they can reach out to me on Instagram. My handle is chemo_diaries. And then I have a website as well. My website is ashleywilliamslcsw.com. But they can reach out to me there. That's my professional site. So if you reach out to me, it doesn't have to just be for counseling services. It can be for any reason. But there's like an email tab there.
Thank you so much. I was going to say a lot of fun. It is fun in itself to do an interview and to talk, but it's also a heavy topic. So yeah. I don't want to just be like, yeah, that was fun. Thank you.
It is fun. It's nice to be able to talk about it, because sometimes we don't really have the space for that, or we try to diminish it or minimize it or not put too much on people, you know? So having room to talk about your experience is healing. And with you especially, I mean, I know I said this before, but Gwen and I have known each other for almost 6 years at this point, I feel like, and we've walked through this, and we have different, but similar kind of things that we've had to walk through and deal with. And it's just a lot. And it's really important to have people who are cheering you on and people who know your journey and who can relate to your journey. And I hate that you can relate, but I've been thankful for your friendship throughout this time.
I mean, like you said, it sucks that you can't relate, but it feels nice to have someone who understands that. Well, I went through this. You know what it's like. I don't have to explain it to you.
Yeah.
Just get it.
Exactly.
And it's been really nice. Thank you so much for redoing this.
Anytime,
really
honestly. I'm here for you. I'm proud of you.
Look at us walking.
I know. Look at us.
Progress. I call it progress.
Amen.
Yes.
All right. I'll see you later.